And the power of my God.
It will be a miracle, nonetheless.
It will.
One that I know he can perform.
If you can perform such a miracle, then my queen is right. Yours is indeed a good and powerful God.
He is.
If you succeed, I shall take it as a sign. And I shall then accept your teaching.
And I shall accept it also.
And our son Isfandia shall help to spread your word throughout our lands.
My lord, this is just more trickery. You must not trust this man.
Why not? Don't you want my horse to be cured?
Forget what sort of man he is.
But perhaps I've been misled. If he can do as he's promised, how can he be a sorcerer? How can saving life be the work of evil spirits? What his religion says is right. Only the destruction of life is evil. Life itself is good. I swear to you that if you do as you say, I will seek out and punish those men who have falsely accused you, whoever they may be.
Yata ahu verio ataratush ashat chitacha vangeush dadamanengo shiautamna.
The story of the Black Horse may or may not have happened exactly the way legend tells it, but the support that King Vishtaspa gave was indeed the turning point for this new religion, Zoroastrianism. One has only to think of someone today coming to be President of the United States or the Queen of England and announcing that he was in fact a messenger of some newly discovered God, armed with specific instructions on changing the entire nation's way of life, to realize the impact Zarathustra's meeting with the king had. Over a period of years, King Vishtaspa traveled the entire country, teaching and explaining the message of the new monotheistic religion. The king, traveling with his son, was successful in convincing his people. And so Zoroastrianism became firmly established throughout the land.
Jamaspa, I am too old for this life.
What will you do, mother?
I have led a full life. I have fought for our faith with all the energy that I possess. And now I have grown weary of the struggle. Isfandia can continue the good fight in my place. I wish to spend my last remaining years in quiet contemplation, cut off from the world and all its troubles.
And how will you then be a good follower of the faith?
Easily. I shall commit the rest of my life to the worship of Ahura Mazda. I shall thank him daily, no, hourly, for the wisdom and happiness that he has brought me. What's the matter? Why do you frown? I thought you'd be pleased. I'm going to turn my back on worldly things and live a priestly life.
But our priests do not turn their backs on the world. They are asked to marry and have children, to be part of the living world. You must show your devotion to Ahura Mazda by your good thoughts, good words, and good deeds in this world, not outside of it.
Then I'll give away all my wealth so that I'll no longer be polluted by it, by material things.
You seem to want to punish yourself. There is no need, my lord. There's nothing wrong with enjoying the things which one can have, so long as your wealth has not been dishonestly obtained.
We live in such comfort. We are the most fortunate of men. Surely there must be something we can do for those less privileged than ourselves.
One should follow the example of Ahura Mazda, who gave so generously when he created the world. Wealth is nothing to be ashamed of if it comes from hard work. Man must care for his family and give generously to those less fortunate than himself.
And I have a gift for you, my lord. Not wealth, but worth everything to me. My niece, Habobi. If you would have her as your wife, it would be the greatest honor you could do to me. I cannot.
Cannot?
see. Very well.
No, it's not very well. He offers you the greatest gift in his possession, and you spurn it. Why can you not? Your priests are encouraged to marry.
I cannot accept her, my lord, without seeing her face first.
It's not in our custom to reveal a bride's face before her marriage.
No, it is not. Indeed, it is not.
It is the custom now, my lord. If we marry, we must marry as equals. You will be my partner, not my property. By the sacred act, we will become united in both the physical and the spiritual worlds. And we will work by our good thoughts to help each other acquire good minds and learn to be truthful, one to the other. For truth is the greatest gift that husband and wife can give each other.
Zarathustra married and had many children, and according to legend, he is believed to have been assassinated at the age of 77 by fanatics opposed to his teachings. The prophet left behind a legacy for all mankind. His principles of a democratic way of life are embodied to this day in governments the world over. One can see his ideas today at the United Nations in the King Cyrus proclamation of democracy. His historic treatment of women as equals was revolutionary then and even now. Perhaps Zarathustra's greatest gift to mankind was his striving for truth.
But these facts, if they are facts, are not in the Gathas, nor are many of the episodes we've seen so far.
No, they occur in the much later texts, some of them 2,000 years later. Nevertheless, there's a beautiful continuity of thought, of ideas, of content between the early and later works.
So then is it true or not?
Religious truth is of a different order from literal truth. Zoroastrianism offers a vision, not a description of the world, and its myths and rituals are the means by which this religious vision is made perfect. Zarathustra was the first to recognize the importance of an all-wise God, and that perception, that seed, has influenced the major religions of today, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all of which believe in one God.
But then tell me, why is it then that our religion is dying out? Is it because it's being carried forward by younger and stronger faiths? Or perhaps it's just outlived its natural life?
No, you do not measure the truth of the religion merely by the number of its followers, but surely by the quality of its people.
All right, then
and the length of its survival.
All right, then convince me of the relevance today for me to follow a religion of fire worshippers.
We do not worship fire as a god, as you put it, any more than the Christians worship the cross as their god.
In the Gathas, the Zoroastrian Psalms, fire becomes the light, the strength of truth, reaching up towards heaven. This light, like its creator, casts away the darkness. By revering the sacred fire, Zoroastrians remember to keep alive the strength of God which lives in all mankind. The symbol, this fire, kept burning in all Zoroastrian temples, must never go out, as a sign of living faith that the darkness of evil, Angra Mainyu, can be repelled. Zoroastrian ritual, similarly, helps to bring insight, helps its followers refresh their spirits, helps find courage, and reminds them of the genuine joy of bringing harmony to the world. The creation of the world was set out in the Zoroastrian holy scriptures, the Bunda Hisham. God's plan was for a world that would last for 12,000 years. In the beginning, first 3,000 years, God created the perfect spiritual world. Then in the next 3,000 years, he created the sky, earth, plants, cattle, man, and fire. Then came Angra Mainyu, in the shape of a serpent, bringing with him death and destruction, famine and vice. Zarathustra was brought to help man fight evil. In the final 3,000 years, the seeds sowed by Zarathustra in Lake Kasoya in Iran will magically bring forth 3 redeemers. When the last redeemer has completed his tasks, evil will be eliminated, and the dead will be resurrected and reunited with their living souls. And then time, as we now know it, will cease to exist, and the world will be perfect once more. A professor provided Zubin with his library's wealth of information about the ancient religion.
Just as I'm beginning to see a relevance, a code to live by, I come up against a creation story that's 1,000,000 miles from the rational thinking I've seen so far. Am I being unfair? What's this 9,000 years, for instance? If we are in the final 3,000 years, how long do we have to go?
I don't think you should take that literally, any more than most Jews or Christians now believe that the God of the Old Testament literally created the world in 7 days.
So am I to believe that it's another allegory, a battle between the good and the evil?
You see, it shows the optimism of the religion, because there is never any doubt that in the end, Angre Mainyu will be vanquished.
Yes, I can see all that, but what worries me is that the story seems to come from a different mouth, not from the man who saw his God as a friendly, accessible figure.
But Zubin, our creation story was written down centuries later than the Gathas, in a work called the Bunda Hishin around the 6th century AD.
Well, now, I've been told to study the Gathas. Now you talk about the Buddha Hishin. I mean, is it important? Well, what connection do they have?
Let me explain. In the time of Zarathustra, 1700 BC, there was no written language in Iran. So the Gathas were memorized by his followers and then passed down by word of mouth to their children.
And what is this language?
Avestan.
Avestan?
It's a sister language to Sanskrit, the language of the earliest Hindu scriptures in India. As you've seen, the Vedic peoples of North India and the Zoroastrians came from the same stock, which had split up sometime before this. Now, in the centuries after Zarathustra, more hymns and religious works were composed by priests and sages. Now, collectively, these were known as the Younger Avesta. Now, the Gathas and most of the Younger Avesta existed before 500 BC. And they were brought together to form the main body of our religious writings, the Avesta. But the Avesta itself was written down much later, in about the 3rd century AD, in a Middle Iranian language called Pahlavi. But come, let's go outside and get some fresh air.
Okay. Now, even though we believe that our religion is the oldest revealed religion in the world, at this point we are still being influenced by contemporary religions.
But Zubin, you must remember that Iran was in the center of the ancient world.
Yeah.
Perfectly situated to influence and be influenced. And when it was at its most powerful, this influence radiated outwards throughout the ancient world, affecting not only Judaism and Christianity and later Islam, but in the Achaemenian dynasty in the 4th century BC, influencing even the thinking of the great philosopher Plato.
No, come on, that's hard to believe. How could you possibly substantiate that?
I'll show you. Come with me. Would you like a cup of tea?
No, this is getting too interesting now.
Plato certainly knew of Zoroastrianism. He mentions Zarathustra in his writings. As a matter of fact, there is even a fresco by Raphael in the Vatican entitled The School for Athens, depicting Zarathustra with Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato.
And what do they have in common?
I'm glad you asked. At the beginning of time, Ahura Mazda created a perfect world, similar to the ideal world in Plato. But both Platonism and Zoroastrianism agree that the world we live in is not perfect. So Plato concludes from this that it is not the real world, and that the only way to understand the real world is by understanding the ideas behind it. Or, in Zoroastrian terms, by understanding the truth, or asha. Now, to reach such an understanding, Plato says we must use nous, the intuitive mind, exactly paralleled in Zoroastrianism by vohumana, the good mind. Now, by following this path, Plato says we will overcome the corruption of the material world, or in Zoroastrian terms, the corruption caused by angremanium. And in the end, the world will be perfect once again.
That's extraordinary. But why did we exert such an influence in the Achaemenian times? Why were we so great?
Cyrus the Great.
The house of God, which is in Jerusalem, let the house be rebuilt that Nebuchadnezzar destroyed. So, that the gold and silver utensils of the house of God that Nebuchadnezzar stole and brought to Babylon, let them be restored and put back in the temple which is at Jerusalem. And you shall put them in the house of God yourselves.
Just wait till I meet my Israeli friends the next time. So the Jewish people owe so much to the Zoroastrians because via Cyrus and Darius, we actually paid for the rebuilding of their second temple.
That's right.
So now I can ask them the next time I'm back in Jerusalem to help us out.
No, why not? Cyrus's love was an enduring one, and so the Jews considered him the anointed one.
The anointed one? You mean to say that the Jews took Cyrus for their Messiah?
He must have seemed like that to many of them. Here in Isaiah 44, they talk of him as the Messiah. So it's not surprising that they were greatly influenced by the faith of such a king.
But then this was the first real contact between Judaism and Zoroastrianism.
The two faiths already shared certain basic beliefs in monotheism, the essential goodness of the world. But now the Jews took on the Zoroastrian belief in the resurrection and immortality of man and in the final judgment. We see this again in Isaiah chapter 44 and 45.
And these beliefs then filtered through Judaism into Christianity.
Centuries later, yes.
What happened after the conquest of Babylon?
Cyrus was now head of the greatest empire then known to man. But only 7 years later, in 529 BC, he was killed, fighting a tribe of nomads. The first and most generous king of the Persian Empire was buried at his palace near Pasargadae. And on his tomb was the simple inscription, "Here I lie, Cyrus, King of Kings."
These are the ruins of the great palace of Persepolis. The palace was begun by King Darius I, who reigned from 521 BC for nearly 40 years, which was about the same time that Buddha was spreading his message throughout northern India. It was a showplace, a celebration of immense power and wealth. Its massive size was meant to impress the people. In fact, it was the largest palace built in the world's history. The audience hall held 10,000 people. The throne hall was even larger. This palace wasn't just a building. It was an extension of the great empire that Cyrus had created and his son Xerxes continued. Darius believed he had a divine mandate to rule the world. He was a superb administrator and lawmaker. His emphasis on justice is a Zoroastrian trait. Later kings spent their lives enjoying the great wealth Darius and Xerxes had built. Their preoccupation with luxury living started to disintegrate when, in 333 BC, Darius III met Alexander the Great at Issus.
Our enemies are Medes and Persians, men who for centuries have lived soft and luxurious lives. We men of Macedonia and Greece have been trained in the hard school of war and vigilance. But above all, we are free!
Alexander was determined to get his revenge, as did Xerxes when he defeated the Greeks by burning the city-state of Athens. And so the centuries of hatred between the Persians and the Greeks continued. Finally, around 330 BC, Alexander came here to Persepolis and conquered it too.
It has destroyed our city-state. Now it is staring bitterly at me. I want to kill them all. Every single one of them.
On my visit to Persepolis, I heard many reasons for its destruction. Alexander was determined to leave his stamp on the downfall of the Achaemenian Empire. Legend claims that during a drunken orgy, the young conqueror ordered his general Parmenio to destroy the palace. When, however, Parmenio hesitated, he forced his courtesan Thias to select the method by which the palace would be destroyed.
Your glory now.
It was a night Alexander regretted for the rest of his life.
Alexander the Great!
What is a fitting punishment for these pagans who dared fight against Alexander? I wish the slain and my task to decide the fate of my enemies destroyed our Acropolis.
Let Parmenio have his men chop them down.
Don't you think of something more interesting? For those who burned our city-state.
Burn them in return, my lord.
Now, fight! You do it! Do it! Parmenio's no foe. You destroy it! Destroy it! Go on, go on!
You'll never be known as Alexander the Great now. After what you've done, you'll be known as Alexander the Accursed. Alexander the Accursed.
They killed our priests, destroyed the living words of our faith.
But our religious texts, they were safe, weren't they?
No, they were in the minds of our priests. When the Greeks murdered our priests, which they did by the thousands so that they could loot our temples, they destroyed the living books of our faith.
After a few centuries, in 224 AD, the Parthians were overthrown by the ambitious young king Ardesher from Persia. He conquered both the west and east of Iran. He was determined to create a new, centralized, highly nationalistic Persian empire, in which he would be the new Darius. And to achieve these goals, he used violence and the force of the religion itself through his chief priest, Herbad Tanza.
To Gushnast, king of Tabristan of northern Iran. I am required to send greetings by King Ardesher, king of kings.
Very kind. A social visit, I assume.
He has asked me to give you this.
Tell me what further revelations it contains. Are we to suffer still more bloodshed in the name of our religion?
The people themselves are to blame for any punishment and slaughter. For it has only occurred where they have become wicked and forgotten the truths of God's teaching.
Or where they have continued to deny the truth of King Ardesher's innovations?
They are not innovations. He has restored the religion to its ancient state, from which it had decayed since the destruction wrought by Alexander. He has brought the religion together once more, where in Parthian times it was fragmented and dispersed.
But has he created happiness?